There is foreign interference happening in the United States presidential election in 2024, but it's not the foreign interference you have heard drummed about by the intelligence community, by the corporate media, or by any political activists, especially on the left, who wish to use and invoke countries that have been made to be modern-day villains like Russia as the operative words of our time, but it's actually foreign interference that is both legalized and normalized under the guise of diplomatic relationships. And I'm talking about the UK's Labour Party, the current government of the UK, attempt to sway the election in favor of Kamala Harris. There is actually foreign interference happening with the UK right now on three levels: electoral interference, political interference, and geopolitical interference. And I will add an addendum to the word geopolitical: civilizational interference, because what they are doing has profound implications for the survival of America as a republic. So what we're going to do, we're going to actually look at this topic more deeply, and we're going to go over how the United Kingdom Labour Party, which is the center-left, they call themselves center-left, but they're really much more further than that, party in the UK, the current governing power in the UK, how they are trying to sway and I think interfere with the United States presidential election in a manner that violates our national sovereignty. Before we get into that, my friends, hope you're doing well. I'm Christian Watt. Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoy political and social commentary with a philosophical bent, then I must implore you, please like, share, comment, subscribe. Do whatever you can, my friends, to get our message out there. Even if you disagree with me, we are almost at 20,000 subscribers, my friends. I am so excited. We need more people who are willing to have a deeper understanding of the issues that confront our world and our nation. And we need more people who are willing to reconnect through the heritage, the intellectual heritage of our country, through philosophy. If those things interest you, and you want to have a better way of seeing the world or a better way of thinking about things, then please give me a subscription. Be sure to like this video. Be sure to comment on this video. Be sure to share this video. Do whatever you can. I appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much. And now please enjoy the video. So, this topic broke in the news recently when a LinkedIn post floated around social media, courtesy of many different social media users, including my friend Nicholas Lysak, who was one of the first people to get in front of this story, from Sophia Patel, who is the head of operations at the Labour Party in the UK. And Sophia Patel posted an advertisement on LinkedIn where she is basically recruiting Labour Party staff to go and volunteer in the United States on behalf of the Harris campaign. Patel's post reads the following, quote, "I have nearly 100 Labour Party staff, current and former, going to the United States in the next few weeks, heading off to North Carolina, Nevada, and Pennsylvania and Virginia. I have 10 spots available for anyone available to head to the battleground state of North Carolina. We will sort your housing. Email me at, here's the email, if you're interested. Thanks." Now, this was made back a little bit while back in August, and the UK government has had to come out and try to disavow this because Donald Trump and his campaign and Elon Musk and others immediately made an issue of this, saying that it was clearly foreign election interference, which it is, but it's deeper than that. And so Keir Starmer came out, and Keir Starmer simply said that these are volunteers that are doing precisely what labor activists have done in past elections, and that this is not foreign interference. Keir Starmer said the following, quote, "I spent time in New York with President Trump, had dinner with him, and my purpose in doing that was to ensure that between the two of us, we established a good relationship," which we did, and I was very grateful for him making the time. "Of course, as Prime Minister, I will work with whoever the American people return as their president in the election." This claim from Starmer is actually doubtful because Matthew McGregor, who is the former Labour Party digital director, who also, interestingly enough, also worked as a campaign strategist under Barack Obama, so there's a long-standing relationship we're going to get into between the UK and the US politics here, told Politico recently in 2024 that the collaboration between Labour and the Democrats had been traditionally one-way traffic. In other words, Labour was giving the suggestions and the Democrats weren't really receiving it. The Politico goes on to say that, quote, "For the first time in 25 years, McGregor said, the Democrats believe they have something to learn from Labour. So for 25 years, it's been one-way traffic, and yet Starmer is justifying this intrusion into United States politics on the basis of tradition, where there is no tradition. This should show you the kind of political operator he is." Now, Starmer is simply trying to save face here, because what Starmer is not mentioning is that Patel's recruitment calling post is not the first time this election cycle that the UK Labour Party has actually intervened directly on behalf of Kamala Harris. For example, it was reported by Political, Washington Post, and several other people back a few months ago as the posting of this video that several of Keir Starmer's closest and most trusted Downing Street aides attended the Democratic National Convention in Chicago to speak with members of Vice President Kamala Harris's campaign. Amongst those who attended in that convoy from the UK are none other than Morgan McSweeney, a top aide in Downing Street, which is where the Prime Minister lives, the top aide in the Labour government, and the Downing Street Director of Communications, also the top aide in the Downing Street government, basically the PR guy for Starmer's administration, Matthew Doyle. Both of them went to the convention and they had meetings, clandestine meetings, with the Kamala Harris campaign. Not only that, but after that, a month or so after that, a even bigger UK politico, Deborah Madison, who is one of the top polling people in the UK on behalf of the Labour Party. She went to Washington and she briefed the Kamala Harris campaign on what a successful center-left run for higher office looks like. Essentially, Labour is trying to collaborate with Kamala Harris for a few reasons. Number one, to get her elected. And number two, to show her that she can stay in the left wing in her rhetoric and still win the presidency if she adopts some of their language and some of their proposals. Now, the very insidious thing about this, before I go a little bit deeper, is that whenever you have a foreign party coming into an election and trying to influence it, they are violating the territorial sovereignty, I would even say, of that country, because they are attempting to partake in a process that, number one, A, they have no principled commitment to, and number two, they will not bear the intimate effects of. Certainly, whoever the next president is will impact UK politics in a moment, in some way, shape, or form, and I'll get into that in a moment. But they don't have the same effects that those of us who actually live here in the States actually have. Not only that, but the Kamala Harris campaign has openly turned towards Labour Party UK, in other instances as well, to get advice on their campaign strategy, because they have failed in so many different ways. But this electoral interference, my friends, is only part of the UK Labour Party's attempt to influence the presidential election. And I think it's only a part of a broader history of interference in U.S. domestic affairs on behalf of the United Kingdom government in general, under both the Conservative Party and the Labour Party, that has gone unnoticed because it is justified by the nebulous term of the United States and the UK having a special relationship. It was recently leaked that internal documents from the UK Labour Party had a political goal within the United States borders. And that political goal from their internal Center for Countering Digital Hate was to, quote-unquote, kill Elon Musk's Twitter. This reporting is courtesy of Matt Taibbi. And they had several annual priorities. Number one, kill Elon Musk's Twitter. Two, advertising focus. Three, trigger EU and UK regulatory action. And finally, progress towards a change in USA and support for a particular program. These are several initiatives that have to do, especially two of them, that have to do with how the United States conducts policy within its own borders, that the Labour Party actively sought and conspired to in fact impact. And this is one of the reasons why Elon Musk has had a very negative reaction to them, and he declared war on the Labour Party. And of course, the part that makes this particularly relevant to United States politics is that not only is Twitter, obviously, Twitter X a US-based company, but in the memo, the Labour Party mentioned setting up a meeting with US Senator Amy Klobuchar to forward their policy of killing Elon Musk's Twitter. So they intended to collaborate with a United States Senator to impact a United States company, but doing it while being, of course, a foreign power. But it goes much deeper than Elon Musk. It goes much deeper than Downing Street aides going to the DNC. It goes much deeper than the top UK pollster for Labour and left-wing causes going and giving Kamala Harris campaign advice. It goes much deeper than rhetorical strategies. It goes so much deeper because I just told you there are three levels. We went over the electoral level and now the political level. But the geopolitical impacts of the persistent attempts of the UK government to influence United States domestic affairs is the most egregious. And to understand this, we have to understand two things. Number one, We have to understand the demise of what is called the liberal international world order. And number two, we have to understand the special relationship that Britain and America has had for hundreds of years, but has intensified since the dawn of the 20th century and has been used to essentially shape United States foreign policy. So on the topic of this special relationship, let me preface this. The special relationship between the United States and the United Kingdom is nothing short of what Washington would describe in his farewell address as an entangling alliance, one that gets the United States involved in other countries' domestic affairs without just cause to national self-interest or national self-preservation. It is the epitome of an entangling alliance, and why it is so will become clear in a moment. But the special relationship between the UK and the United States has been defined in many ways, but there's a consistent theme through all these definitions. George Bush, the president who declared wars on nouns and got the United States involved in boondoggles across the world, he described the special relationship between the UK and the US as, quote unquote, the rock upon which all dictators this century have perished. He's referring to the relationship between FDR and Winston Churchill fighting Nazism and communism during World War II. And you'll notice something, that if you go all the way back post 1945, post 1944, every single foreign policy adventure has in some way been tied and justified to stopping the rise of a Hitlerian type figure. Now, I'm not someone that wants to see that kind of figure rise again. I think that the Nazis and Hitler were an absolutely evil, and they were an evil force, and they were a force for so much malevolence in our society. But that single horrific series of events that happened in World War II has been used to justify and direct foreign policy for decades upon decades, even when it wasn't particularly relevant. And that is something that we should really understand. This is the same tactic Zelensky has been using to get money from America. Or in other countries as well, by the way. He's been going to the parliaments and the legislative bodies of different countries and invoking their national tragedies. He came to Congress and invoked 9/11 to emotionally manipulate legislators into giving him money, and of course they wave the Ukrainian flag in response as opposed to being disgusted as a normal human would be. But anyway, so the special relationship is built upon the bedrock of the post-war consensus. The idea that there must be what is called a rules-based international order that includes the existence of the United Nations and also includes the existence of NATO as forces to direct the state of geopolitics. Do you see the issue already? The special relationship between Britain and the UK, as described by Bush and others, is a relationship of power and domination over foreign policy rather than a relationship over mutual self-defense and mutual self-interest. It is indeed a relationship that involves self-defense, obviously, but it's not just that. It is so much more, and it is so much more expansive. Let's put some more substance into the relationship between the UK and the US. So, for example, the UK and the US were both founding members of the United Nations and also of NATO. Both of them sit on the United States Security Council, and they are members of the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, the G20, the G7, the World Bank, the World Trade Organization, so on and so forth. So from a purely strategic standpoint, the UK and the US, being on so many different internationalist bodies, have an incentive to work together in order to maintain their standing on those bodies, although the question is never asked if those bodies go towards the highest good of America. It's always assumed that you need to have these organizations in order for America to operate effectively in the world, and that's part of the problem. They also had a military partnership during the Gulf War. Britain was one of the biggest contributors to the war on terror, which of course has never ended and was not really all that effective and lost a lot of lives, so on and so forth. And during the Cold War, Britain and the United States cooperated to control nuclear weapons. Now, there's just so many different factors to this. But the Atlantic Council themselves, which is one of the, I think, chief villains of the world, the Atlantic Council, one of the top spokespeople for internationalism, they said that the special quality of the United States-United Kingdom alliance has been grounded in a shared vision of an open, democratic, rules-based order, a foundation threatened by the populist impulses that propelled both Donald Trump and Theresa May into power. So what we need to understand is this. The reason Washington cautioned against entangling alliances wasn't just because he was concerned with foreign conflict or concerned with sending United States troops off to faraway lands. That wasn't his concern. His concern was that the interest of two countries would commingle and they would mix to such a point that America lost sight of its own interest, number one. And America lost sight of what was correct morally in the face of what was strategically beneficial for the maintenance of a particular alliance. So in other words, an entangling alliance can itself become a moral proposition that is independent from actual morality. Someone can justify sending a nation's money to a particular group of people or sending a nation's army to go fight for a particular war in the name of an entangling alliance without actually asking the question, does this war or conflict actually protect or benefit the nation domestically? And so when an alliance becomes an entanglement, a moral proposition, you can justify almost any and every geopolitical action under the basis of strategic interest. Strategic interest is not a concrete basis upon which to ground foreign policy, and yet it has been the basis for over 80 plus years, and for that reason, it has emboldened NATO, emboldened the United Nations, emboldened the Atlantic Council to draft justifications for destabilizing regimes, going into Libya and bombing Libya when we propped up Libya and propped up Gaddafi, and then deposing him and leaving the country into chaos and terror, going into the Middle East and destabilizing that, so on and so forth. In other words, the special relationship, as I mentioned before, is simply a relationship of strategy, not a relationship of moral necessity or a relationship of mutual benefit, insofar as it concerns the domestic population. The only part of the relationship between the UK and the US that actually does benefit the population is the relationship between their economy. According to a report, the United States and the United Kingdom are the world's first and sixth largest economies in terms of GDP. They trade over $273 billion worth of goods and services each way, with a two-way direct investment totaling $1.3 trillion. And the US is the UK's largest trade partner, accounting for 13.3% of all UK imports. So, here is my whole concern with this entire debacle. Whenever you have a foreign government who considers their interest linked with your nation's interest on the basis of a strategic proposition and not on the basis of a moral proposition, you will get a foreign government that has absolutely no problem doing things that harm the sovereignty of your nation, i.e. manipulating your elections to achieve their goals. But furthermore, another part of the UK-US relationship with Britain is the Five Eyes program. Well, many of you who are astute may know this, but for those of you who do not and who may not be informed on this, the Five Eyes program is essentially a spy program between 5 different agencies that agree to share intelligence and information, supposedly on foreign threats, but they also do so on their own populations. They collect both phone transcripts and emails on their own populations, and they share them amongst each other without warrants, without guardrails. So in that sense, not only is the UK-US relationship one of strategy, empty strategy that is devoid of morality, it's also one that is devoid of the procedures that effectively protect good and just governance, the procedures borne out in the United States' commitment to classical republicanism, which put checks and balances on authority. The entire national security industry has been a defiance, a black eye, to the idea of checks and balances. The entire FISA court, which justifies and rubber stamps the intrusions upon American private life by the government, has also been a black eye, and Britain is intimately linked with both, despite being a foreign country. The truth is, and this is the reason why when Trump was first elected, there was great anxiety within the internationalist community about him being elected, is that they view a president committed first and foremost to their own countries as populist, nativist, and evil. They conceptualize the internationalist view of the world, which is the civilizational threat the UK-US relationship in most cases represents. They conceptualize nation states as simply elements of a broader canvas that exists in the world, not as concrete, self-existing nations within themselves. So in other words, a nation is simply a member, an amorphous member of a global body that contributes towards a global cause, not a concrete existing thing that contributes towards the preservation of its people, which is the only sound conceptualization of what a nation is. Keir Starmer's illicit, in my opinion, morally illicit interventions within our elections is only downstream of a broader intervention within our society of a strategic partner that, instead of actually going towards our highest good in most cases, outside of economics, actually uses the United States as geopolitical cover for its own machinations. Boris Johnson, for example, at the G7, said that the United States and the UK have an indestructible relationship over talks with Biden in 2021, and he particularly said, for example, the US and the UK shared a belief in human rights, the rules-based international order, and the transatlantic alliance. That's the core upon which this relationship is built. The liberal international order was this aspirational idea that said that the world should be governed by rules and higher principles, and that if that is to happen, there would be a more just, more peaceful, more cohesive world that we exist in. Well, the reality has been that this rules-based international order has been used as cover by people that don't really care about rules, don't care about order, but simply care about their own self-interest as nation-state actors, to justify the rigging of economic systems against other countries by scamming them in free trade, and China does this all the time, to justify incursions upon other countries that may be illicit, which Russia has done plenty of times, other countries have done many times, the United States has done many times, to justify a kind of world police mentality where the world is unofficially governed by this group of powers that seek to inflict their vision of the world upon other countries. For example, the United States' goal in democratizing the Middle East is a good example of this. The rules-based international order, while it is a noble and aspirational goal, has been little more than a justification for a policing of the world that has done nothing more but increased human suffering and brought more chaos and turmoil to our world. And yet, this is the basis upon which the UK-US relationship sits. In closing, my friends, I think that we need to go beyond simply blaming Keir Starmer for this, or we certainly can. He really wishes to impact our policy, as is his party. But we need to blame the leaders, both Republicans and Democrats, that have sold us down the river for so many decades, that have bound our foreign policy interests to a rules-based international order in defiance of the interests of our nation, solely because they don't want to be seen as nativist or because they believe that we can make the world better through force, which is a losing proposition almost every time. We need to recognize what they've done to us, and then as Americans seek to change our outlook on the world. We are not the panacea for the world's problems. The government is not even the panacea for all of America's problems. The government exists for a particular function, and that function is to serve the people in accordance with first principles, not to serve the world in accordance to the strategic diktats of whatever technocrats exist beyond our borders. And for that reason, I think we should also reevaluate the UK-US special relationship, and along with disavowing the foreign interference of the Starmer government in our elections, disavow the geopolitical and civilizational interference that takes America away from its identity and puts it into some amorphous blob up there. We should disavow that and seek to withdraw from these institutions like the UN, like NATO, and so on and so forth, that continue to erode our identity as American citizens and our identity as a country. That is the only antidote to fix this erosion of the culture that is indicative, I think, of this more downstream effect that I've listed in this video. So my friends, hope all of you are going to be doing well. Like this video, comment on this video, subscribe to this channel. I love you guys so much. Thank you so much. Study history, study philosophy, remain morally convicted, and please stay pensive. Bye, guys.